Commission work session for Monday, October 7th, 2019. Please stand for pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Jess.
Councilman Sturridge is absent due to military leave. Councilman Livingston.
Present.
Councilwoman Kranz.
Present.
Councilman Taylor.
Present.
Councilman Packstratt.
Present.
Councilman Mazzo.
Present.
President Scanlon.
Present.
6 years, 1 absence.
I
Sturridge.
had my mind on something else. Let's welcome Leonard Swill with the,
Joetti.
Joe. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Joe, come on up.
Come on up. All right. Right here?
Sure, it's fine, sir. Yes.
I got all dressed up. I thought it was like a big city council meeting.
It is. This is the non-dress-up day.
Oh, I know, it was casual day.
Wednesdays are the dress-up days.
So Joetti is the developer of the project for Town and Country. We are anticipating at some point we'll be able to connect with Leonard Skrill. He had let us know that his wife was undergoing a medical procedure, was going to email me hopefully shortly so that we could call him via the telephone. Lenny Skrill is with New York State HCR, Home and Community Renewal. So that is the state agency, one of multiple state agencies that are participating in this project. So I know at the last work session, I really did, the talking about this project. The point of this meeting right here is to introduce Joetti to all of you and to provide you with an opportunity to ask him questions directly about the Town and Country project on the north side of the city. So I think really with that, I will just introduce Joe, and maybe you could just start by telling council a little bit about yourself and the project, and then feel free to ask any questions on the project that you have for Joe.
Okay, I'll do a quick 5-minute summary of kind of our firm and what we're looking to do, and then we can go to the questions. So I run a company called JE Properties. It's a partnership between myself and Gary Jennison. His family has been in the real estate business since the 70s, and they have about 11,000 apartments from Boston down to South Carolina. And on those, it's about 8,000 of them are affordable. Really what they specialized in, and now us, are mixed income communities, taking especially large communities and that had some problems that can be kind of self-contained and fixing, kind of trying to help on both the social aspects as well as the capital needs, on them. My background was I previously was with another developer where I was a small partner, and we basically partnered up about 3 years ago to do this. I have a lot of experience in upstate New York, so I did a few different projects up in Rochester, and believe it or not, one in Malone, New York. So that kind of, I decided to come here to Binghamton, and the real reason was, I've done a lot with the state of New York, and it was a project where the current owners, there's some Section 8 on it, there's some affordable housing already, and they don't have any affordable housing experience, and so I think that they've run into some problems with that. And they don't have the experience on how to bring the capital into us what this project needs. The building was, or I guess there's 22 buildings there. They were originally built in the 1960s, and if you've been by there, there really hasn't been much capital put into there ever. There was some new boilers put in a few years ago, but other than that, it's in rough shape. And so our project is, we're looking to go in and on the exterior, it's new roofs, new landscaping. Obviously as you guys know, there's some safety issues. It's gating the community. It's putting fencing around, security cameras. Lighting, it needs a lot more lighting. I think one of the main things on security though is also management and oversight. We have staff in Boston where we have 2 compliance officers that oversee all of our sites. We will go to the staff. We told them we were going to offer everyone a chance to reapply for their jobs. I think training would be a major factor in it. They really haven't been trained, and so it's training. It's bringing on more staff. Actually, we're going to need someone that's an on-site compliance person. We probably need someone that's what's called a resident service coordinator who kind of oversees and helps, with social services at the site. There's right now there's a Section 8 contract on 98 out of the 200 and there's currently 256 units there. So there are a lot of outside of that. There's another 150 or so apartments, which a lot of the tenants there are overburdened. We actually went through and over 100 people or 100 actual homes there are overburdened, which means that the tenants are paying more than 30% of their income as rent. And so our plan with the state is to go in there and to make sure everyone's rents stay the same. We're not raising rents, and we're not permanently displacing anyone. And so we think that's.
There's a big issue I have with that because you got drug dealers living there and pedophiles living there.
So on permanent displacement, so no one's being permanently displaced if they're paying rent, if they're following the rules. So we have to follow.
What do you mean by following rules?
So fair housing, we have to follow fair housing rules, and as well as following their lease. So
is there no drugs on residents? That one of your rules?
So HUD allows you, if there's suspected criminal drug activity, you can evict someone, and we do.
And will you be keeping up with that?
Yes.
Because I've heard people say that they would do it and then they don't do it. They just keep turning a blind eye because, the rent's paid.
We don't. So I guess I should let me finish going through kind of what we're going to do with the site. I'll explain kind of because it's a good question, right? So there's a strategy on how we deal with that and why we have the ability to kick those people out, because we're going to go through where and just so people know, this is really the one way we can do this is through state funding and through subsidies. You can't go in and we have $18 million of hard costs going into the project. There's no way you can do that on a market basis, right? We can't go in and charge rents where they are and do that. So we have a lot of money coming from the state, from HCR, that allows us to put those funds in. And so it's redoing kitchens. And redoing kitchens means new countertops, new cabinets, new flooring, new appliances. We're redoing floors across, throughout the unit. We're repainting them. We're redoing bathrooms. The buildings are inside. It's going to feel like a totally different place. On the exteriors, we're doing roofing. We're doing half the boilers are new. Half of them are going to have to be changed. There's no community space at the project. There's only a management office. So we're going to put a new community room in, a new workout facility, and a new management office. So I guess to kind of answer your question, I know it was a circuitous way of doing it, but if you change the place and you change the placemaking and you keep rents where they are, people have an incentive not to screw up, not to break rules. It's like a very nice place to live and very low rents. People don't want to break the rules, and yes, we're gonna.
Normal people don't want to break the rules. I've been there. I know the people who live there.
And you're 100%
they're
right.
not normal people.
No, so
okay, they are gangsters. They are drug dealers.
No,
they're not there to do anything except get some money and prey on the people living there. I want those people out of there.
And we want those people out of there. I mean,
you can't sit there and expect somebody who's playing the system to work with the system. They will play the system every time.
So we've taken over, I mean, this is what we do. I mean, this is actually a relatively small project compared to other projects we've taken over. So we have a project in Dorchester that goes back to the 70s with public housing. It was a horrific place to live. I mean, shootings all over the place. 1,300 units, we went in and made it mixed income housing. When people said mixed income housing doesn't work.
It does work because then they have something to look up to. I do agree with that.
Yes.
I've been getting that in my.
And so this is a project where we call it affordable housing, but it's really mixed income. You know, not everything is going to be affordable. Okay, well, it's not everything is going to be affordable in the sense where it is subsidized, so someone can come in and they pay 30% of the rent. We will have units in there where people will be making more than 60% of the income they can make. And that's what we're working with the state is we want to have. I agree with you. We feel like when you have that ability, it changes the feeling of the project. So, I guess to your point, we've been in places where drug dealers run the site, and we don't want that. That is not a good environment for anyone.
And
for us,
there's
for our
also-
staff, for
There's also pedophiles. I have little girls that are 13, 14, 15 years old that are afraid to go out at night because of the people that live there because they are being harassed.
so you have the ability to evict people if they are on if they are a registered sex offender.
I can tell you, I'm really glad to see the good management going in because they've just been taking anyone with a pulse.
Yeah, and the difference is if you can put the capital into it and you have the ability to get subsidy, right? So if you're using that subsidy correctly, you should have an ability to select people. And the way we can select, which we're illegally allowed to select, is we can run criminal background checks. We can run credit checks. And that's what we're allowed to do.
Do you have anything about, because a lot of the way they have the laws now for rentals is that if you have a woman who goes in with 2 kids, she gets a place, she gets a boyfriend who moves in later.
If he's not on the lease, then either that is a violation of the lease, right?
Okay.
So we will evict people, and that is where I had a whole conversation with our compliance people.
Because sometimes the landlords are having issues, like they'll give them keys and then like you can't evict like, these people after they have keys because they're already considered residents, and we've had a lot of trouble with people practically like squatting and whatnot as well.
Yes, and that's I mean everything you explained is it's normal problems we run into.
I have a landlord association. So
The what?
I have a landlord association.
Yes.
So I hear a lot of complaints, and I have 2 nonprofits. One does with housing, with people who are coming out of drug rehab and coming out of correctional facilities. So I know a lot of the issues that there are. So I'm sorry
You
if I
fit them all.
Councilman Pepster, you had a question?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. Thanks for coming down
Yeah.
to talk to us tonight. You mentioned that thing about the staff that's there. How many staff members do they have?
So they have 2 full-time, 1 part-time person that works in the office, and then I believe they have another 7 people that work kind of on the exterior, or we call them outside the building. So they're working on maintenance or their day quarters and stuff like that.
And you would increase the number of employees?
Our thought is, they need a compliance person. There's no one there that does compliance full-time. So I didn't get into kind of what the restrictions are. So on this project, we're using low-income housing tax credits. There is a Section 8 contract there currently, which means it's governed by HUD, and the low-income housing tax credits are overseen by HCR, which is the state housing agency. They're also going to have debt on it, and that will also put additional restrictions. So we'll have 2 years for construction and another 30 years after that. So it's a 32-year restriction. I guess, I'm sorry, your question was, I have a 7-week-old horse.
If you're going to add more employees, you said you're going to have a
compliance person.
person and a coordinator or a supervisor, I guess.
Yeah. So the reason for the compliance person. So we need to certify people. Each resident will have 2 files essentially. They have a file that they comply with tax credit law, with the low-income housing tax credits. They also have a file that they comply with HUD. So when you're going through every year and going through 253 files times, potentially 2, we need someone there full time, overseeing that.
So what do they need to do? Show you their tax returns from the year before in order to qualify for a particular income? Or
You're a little outside of my area of expertise, but it's essentially they have to, there are different rules for HUD and for the low-income housing tax credit, but they have to show, verify their income, and then we have to verify that they qualify for living in affordable housing. So each one has its own restrictions.
So you mentioned there are 100 apartments where the tenants are overburdened because their rent is more than a percentage of what they should be.
Correct, yes.
So I remember a rule where your rent shouldn't be any more than a week's pay. Is that something is that where you're dealing with?
Well, the rule is 30%. Is kind of the guideline for being overburdened. I guess.
So how does that percentage work? I mean, if your rent is $1,000,
yep,
then 30%. I mean,
it'd be $300, right? And so in that case, it's a good question, right? So if you have a Section 8 contract, what happens is let's say that the market rate is $700. You'd say, well, you can afford $300, and so they pay us $300. And then the Section 8 contract, we go to HUD, and HUD says, your market rent's $700 is what we all agree the rent is. And HUD pays us $400, and the tenant pays us $300. And so that's how.
And that's how long? Is that for?
So our HAP contract, the longest you can do a Section 8 contract is 20 years. So that'll be in place for 20 years.
And what is good? They require the residents to take care of their property as well.
They do like a REACT score. I mean, that's one of the things that's happened at the.
They can get kicked off HUD if they do.
Yes, you're on top of it. So, that's a problem that the current landlord has had. I mean, they've had.
Well, he's probably using DSS and not HUD, which is the problem that he's probably having.
He has both.
And DSS has there's no circumstances if they destroy the property.
So they've had REACT scores, and they've had failing REACT scores. I think recently they did pass it, which allowed them to put Section 8 back on there.
That's good.
So that was being withheld, I think, for a period of time. But that's your correct.
Okay, so just one or two more questions on that. So you said you would have a mixed use?
Yeah, mixed income, yeah.
Mixed income, so would it be the mixed income of the same apartment, different rents because of the income levels, or are they going to be a bigger or a better apartment? Or
No, all the apartments will be the same, right? So it's not where we're creating a lower class for people that are
They just
make
get
less money.
help paying for it.
It's essentially it. They're getting help paying for the rent.
So where's the rents now? I mean, when you say that people are being overburdened because of what's the rent for those apartments?
I should have memorized that before. I can't, but it's
Probably
approximately
$750, I believe.
yeah. That's what
I
I'm
think
saying.
So 750 is the
I think it's
median
750
income.
to 850 for. Right, so 750. So in your case there, right, a person would make roughly, can make roughly 3 times that in a month, and that would be considered affordable.
But if you have people who are working minimum wage, or
They can't. So that's what we have.
They're not gonna be able to afford it. Yeah.
They're tenants and they're making $12,000
Yeah,
a year
or
and
if
paying $750, and
if they're
I
on
don't know how you do that, but.
All right, but if there's Section 8 and these different programs, then how is someone making $12,000 a year paying the $700? Number one, if you make $12,000, you can't afford $700 a month.
It's a good question, right? So right now, out of the 250 so units, there's roughly 100 units that have Section 8. So only 100 of them have some kind of form of rent subsidy. We're looking to increase that, and so with HCR, so we have an ability where we can cover that at 100. So there's 200 out of roughly 250.
All right.
would be covered.
So your rents will be market rate, but it's gonna be subsidized through, government programs. Pretty
For those who need it. Well, it's just like
I
everybody
mean,
else who needs it.
I would say to answer your question, in theory that's correct. In principle, we are, we've talked to HCR, and this is something that we agree with, and they've really pushed it on us, is that not raising rents, right? So keeping it so, we're not trying to, even if you look, we went through and we looked at everyone's rent, or everyone's income. And you look at it, even the people that, let's call it, can't afford rent, it's not like, there's no millionaires living, right? I mean, it's workforce housing, and people that are we would call it affordable with a lowercase a. I mean, it's affordable almost by its nature, not because someone went there and fixed it up and made it a nice affordable.
How big are the apartments? Are they 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom?
There's 1-bedrooms, there's a mix of 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, and 3-bedrooms.
Are you familiar with the new state law that they came up with? I'm sure you are, with the
There's a lot of
rentals rights. I mean, it just came into effect in the last
For what
month or
rights?
two. Rental rights. It's laws based on the New York City
The rent control.
but it's statewide. So it's become
We
much
cannot
more
opt out.
difficult to evict a tenant for numerous reasons, but it's much more difficult to have someone vacate. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean, we have people that full-time, that's what they deal with, and that's what we're across 8-9 states, and so it's, we have to comply obviously with state and federal law, right? So.
Now, do you keep your units, or do you, once you get these, as a developer, I
Yep.
mean, pretty much you put the deal together, and then do you keep it for a while and then sell it, or do you? I mean, how these units you have, are they run by one company? Or do you buy and sell? What is it? I mean, what is it you really do with?
So it's a good question. So for the most part, we're buy and hold people. We own projects from, partners that we own projects going back to the 70s. From on this project specifically, we have tax credits on it, and with the tax credit laws, from a practical standpoint, you have tax credit compliance that you have to go through for 15 years. And so, is it possible you could sell before 10 years? It'd be very, very difficult. We'd have to own this from a practical standpoint for at least 10 years, and most likely 15. That's just our general nature, is that we own properties for a long time. That's our goal. That's how we got to 11,000 units.
Mr. Reddy, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You talk about your low interest mortgage. You applied for the state, or you're applying for it? Is there a
Yes.
mortgage? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Wait, tell me about what the requirements are there as far as the pilot tied into that, and
So it's a good question. So the state in general, they want to see local support. They want to see that there's some skin in the game at a city level. So typically, if this was, I can speak and tell you about Rochester, because I've done a bunch of work in Rochester. They'd look at Rochester and they'd say, Rochester, you have a bunch of home funds, you have a bunch of CDBG, throw a couple $1 million into this, and we want to see a pilot. And the pilot we want to see is it's called a 10% shelter rent, which means there's a calculation for it. That's what they would expect to see. When I have my background being doing stuff in Rochester, I showed up, I talked to the mayor, and said we'd like to have a 10% shelter rent deal. And he said, well, what would that look for taxes? I said, well, that would decrease our taxes by $100,000. And that didn't go over very well. So I mean, there was a lot of back and forth, and where we kind of came out is where we are today, which is, Joe, listen, we get it, you want to lower taxes, we get it that the state wants to see something, but the city doesn't have a lot of money. What we can do is keep taxes the same, and raise it gradually over the course of your tax credit compliance period, for 32 years. And so I talked to the state about it, and they didn't love the deal, but they understood where, you know, your city is financially, and, you know, I think we have them there, and they're okay with it. So that was kind of the genesis of how this all, you know, I guess came about.
So, I guess, is that, so the pilot, you get in a pilot for the city as a requirement for you to get the mortgage from the state, correct?
We need it from, I wouldn't say, yeah, you reference like the low, like the low interest loans that they're putting, yes, it's what they would call soft funds, you know, which are, you know, they would look at this deal and they would say, you know, if this was a normal non-subsidized deal, the state would, you know, we'd go out and we'd say we can afford I think the mortgage is a few $1 million. And then we get the tax credits and we have a gap the gap is like $20 million is the delta. And so the state says, the way we're gonna, you know, kind of work on that is we're going to put in soft debt, which are 0% or 0.5% or, you know, very low interest loans, to subsidize the project to allow you to do the repairs that we think we should make. And the state, they have on staff, they have architectural teams, the architects on staff that go through and, you know, go line item by line on them, and they say, yes, you need this, no, you don't need it. And that's kind of where we are with the state. And we're still finalizing, I'd say we're still finalizing that debt and what it looks like and what those parameters are. Is where we're at.
Forgive me, but so I guess is yes or no. So the 30-year the 30-year mortgage from the state is contingent upon you getting a pilot for the city, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Without that, you're not going to get the loan.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sorry.
Is it
Sometimes I talk too much.
No, you don't.
Is
You're fine.
it a pilot or is it this particular pilot?
That's a good question. This particular pilot, considering this is, the state doesn't consider this a good pilot. They consider this is a worse than typical pilot from the state's point, by a long shot. Yeah, I mean, we would normally look at, if we did the normal formula, which I've done in other places in upstate New York, you know, we've done it in Chilai, I've done it in Rochester, it would be the shelter rent calculation, which is just the nature of where the rents are, is that it would be roughly $100,000 less than the current taxes.
But just when you say worse, meaning that
Worse for me.
right?
Sorry.
Meaning the state.
Worse for the state. I mean, the state looks at it and they said, you know, Joe, if you got a typical pilot, it would be $100,000 more into the property, which means you could put, I mean, rough numbers, you put more debt on it, which means that the state puts less subsidy in. So it's a push and pull between the state and you, really. I mean, they would like to put less subsidy in, but they also understand from a state perspective that, I mean, Binghamton needs more subsidy than someplace like Rochester does. I mean, it just, you know, that's, I think they understand that. I mean, I'm putting words in Letty's mouth here, but I mean, that would be my take.
The state wanted to see us put more in than
they wanted you to put more skin in the game. They wanted you to take less tax dollars.
Right.
So, I mean, that was the conversation we had with them, so.
Other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So obviously there's a current designation in terms of who is eligible to live, specifically Section 8. How does the HCR designation change? How does that designation change in terms of who is eligible to live at
Okay, so what they'll have is they'd have different, we'll have different kind of, they have different income levels. And so we haven't totally finalized everything, but you know, when you have a couple different subsidy, you know, programs going on. So one is Section 8, which has its own kind of, you know, elements
People
to
have
it.
to apply to Section 8.
Yeah, and then there's also, the state will also have other restrictions where they'll say, you know, this unit, you know, specific unit, you know, you have to make 60% of median income or less. Or this unit, you have to make, you know, 80% of median income or less. And that's, you know, we're trying to make a mixed income, you know, a community where it's whatever the numbers would be, but that's how it would work. And they have their own calculation for income verification.
Well, how would you characterize the change? I mean, is it
There'll be more
flexible? Is it more?
No, it will be more. There will be more restrictions on on making sure that the people and quite frankly, we're making it so everyone in the project will qualify to live there, right? So we're not permanently displacing anyone. Essentially, we're setting income limits where people currently are, and then creating a mechanism so people aren't rent burdened. That is the goal, and that's the goal for the state, and that's our goal as well.
So 32 years is the length of this tax credit agreement with
Yeah,
the state?
so it's the construction period, and once they consider placed in service, and once a building is completed, it's placed in service, and then your restrictions then go for another 30 years.
And then what are the actual, you know, in this agreement, in writing guarantees and restrictions that you're telling us today? You know, that rent is not going up, that you know, everything that you said.
So we'll have some kind of deed restriction on it, which will run with the deed, and it will, you'll be able to pull it up. Anyone can pull our title and pull up the deed restriction. We'll have some kind of agreement with the state that says this is what you have to do to keep these units affordable at this level, and these units affordable at this level. Plus, we'll have on top of that, we'll have a Section 8 contract with HUD, which also spells out rules. And you'd say, well, okay, breaking all these rules, what happens, right? So if we break, the tax credit, our tax credit agreement rules, we have what's called tax credit recapture. So the way we get funding into the project is the state says this qualifies for 4% tax credits, and congratulate, here's your certificate that you can get tax credits in the project. We go out, we sell it to an investor. The investor puts that money in, and we use that money for the project. If I violate that agreement, I have what's called tax credit recapture, and then the investor comes to me and says, Joe, you screwed up. You're supposed to be expert in renting these two people that qualify, and we take out our checkbook and we write a check to them. And so we have very much an incentive not to do that. On top of that, HUD has their own requirements. If we don't follow them,
We stay down.
yeah, they eventually have the ability to hold funds from us. So we would lose revenue to the project.
So what?
Sorry, you're probably way too much about.
No, that's all
Yeah.
important information. But I'm trying to read in between the lines here a little bit. Has there been a number, agreed to, or a percentage of income for residents? It sounds like there hasn't been in terms of.
I would say okay. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, just in terms of what that threshold is to keep the property clearly at not for mixed income up and down, but continue being affordable housing.
Okay. So what considered for low income housing tax credit, 60% of median income is considered affordable from the state's from a tax credit compliance standpoint. Our guess, rough numbers is, out of that, probably 200 people would be under 60% median income currently. So what we're working out with the state, and it's not set in stone the exact numbers, but those are the rough numbers, and it really depends on the residents living on that, and we're setting we're not setting people up for failure or ourselves up for failure. We're looking at and we're saying, we're going. Unit 101, this person makes 50% of median income. All right, we can make that. That's a tax credit unit. We're gonna, make it so one, they're not permanently displaced, and two, it stays. When those people move out, or whatever, that unit will stay at 60% median income. For the residents that make over 60% median income. We will have some kind of restriction. The state is going to put some restriction on it, whether it's 100% of median income or 80% of median income, and then that person will that family will qualify for their unit, and when they move out, it'll stay. It'll stay for the term of our debt and the term of our tax credit compliance.
And then what do you mean by permanently displaced? What does that
Permanently displaced means they would be forced to move to a different apartment building or a different home outside of our complex.
And what's the difference between that and displaced? So you're saying permanently displaced.
I guess I'm saying if if someone had to temporarily, which would mean that, we have to do work on the units, and we may say, listen, we have to do remediation of the unit. It's not, you can't, it's not safe to be here. We would move them to another unit where they would live for, while that their residency is being fixed. That's the difference.
Gotcha. So that wouldn't have to do with, income or...
Correct. So there's under no circumstances the state want to see us kicking someone off, right? That's what it means. That's the point of it.
they're rent raising and then having a leak.
Correct. And we're kicking this. We're coming up with a back end way of kicking this. That's also why the state. It's not just us. The state is very adamant that we're not raising rents.
Right. Okay. I have received calls from residents on the property, nervous about eviction, nervous about rents raising. So, I think some level of communication with the residents is pretty critical.
We agree. I mean, what we're waiting for is to finalize everything with the state, and then once we have it, I can tell people, and because it's one thing to say this is in generalities what's happening, but I want to be able to say specifically, we have an agreement with the state. It's finalized, and it's approved, and here's what it is. We will bring in specialists that will talk with them and walk through everything, and so everyone, because I agree that we're in this weird limbo where we're having a public meeting, we're talking about it, it's going to be in the paper,
sure.
And there's nervousness, and hopefully after this meeting it's clear it's what it is, and I know it's 1,000 times better to hear it from the person that's running the project, that's in charge of the company buying your building, than hearing it through hearsay or third party, right? So I agree. Once we get to that point and we can say with certainty everything that's happening, that's we'll be scheduling to go in immediately. So
We're gonna have to move on with our agenda now.
Oh, I had some questions.
Well, you get one question, please, because we gotta move on. We're running behind.
Running behind.
Our agenda, yes.
I have actually a bunch of questions. Can we get your contact
I'm happy to.
information?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Do you have a card or
Yes,
something?
Well, the meeting's on, our vote is scheduled for Wednesday, so let the guy ask his questions.
What, this
We're gonna move
Wednesday?
on, but go ahead, ask your question, go ahead.
Is the vote scheduled for
Is it
Wednesday?
It is.
Yes. I don't know that.
It is on the agenda for Wednesday.
It received enough sponsorship to take it on the floor on Wednesday.
So you said earlier that the HUD contracts last for 20 years. Does the contract carry over from owner to owner, or do you have to renew the contract with HUD?
So we have we have to do a transfer, so we have to go through HUD approval. So we're in the process of that right now. So we'll transfer over. And I guess probably, which would be probably your lead-on question, is what happens after 20 years?
Well, my question was actually more on how many years are left on the contract if it's transferred.
Currently
over,
there's
or does it reset when it?
less than 5. It's like it's 4 or so years left currently. So our application to HUD as part of the transfer is we would increase that number to 20 years from 4-ish years.
Okay. And I'm curious to know, when you're renovating these units, because it sounds like it's going to be a big overhaul of this facility, how long do you anticipate it taking so that you can, I mean, it sounds like you're going to have to, do it in stages so that people don't get displaced, doesn't disrupt their lives.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, there's vacancy at the project now. There's some, and our plan is to basically renovate a building worth of units at a time, which is there's either 11 or 12 units in each building, and so it takes, rough numbers, it takes about a month to do top to bottom a unit. Is the plan.
Mayor, is it urgent we vote on this on Wednesday?
Well, I mean, that was you want to delay it. We had submitted it at the last work session, so it's gone its regular 2 weeks. What is that?
What's a delay?
It means they vote on it in 2 weeks.
What's it?
Okay, is there a particular reason?
Well, I was gonna have whoever wanted to ask questions, put them in writing and get them through Jess to get to Mr. Eddie.
Well, I mean, if it's possible, we'd like to keep this on track. I mean,
Okay.
the IDA had actually asked us
Can we do
to vote on it 2
10
weeks ago,
What's that?
and we didn't
Can we
think
do
that
another 10
we
minutes?
didn't think it was right to just have.
All right, Dan, go ahead, ask your question. We're gonna do this 10 more minutes and then we're
Okay.
gonna move on.
Okay, does anybody else have? 'Cause
I do have a couple
Okay,
questions.
so I'll just take a couple more minutes here. So I'm curious about, you saying that the rents won't increase. How does that work? How do you make money if over the next 20 years the rents don't increase? I imagine there's some sort of increase.
So rents are not increasing. They will have, I would say, over the period of time, there'll be some kind of inflation increases. But I am governed by state, by LIHTC rules, right? So I can there's only so much I can even increase it. In Section 8, from a tenant standpoint, it can never be more than 30% of their income anyway. Kind of what we went over the example where, they pay $300 and $400 comes from the federal government. So the answer is it's the state subsidy. They're giving, we're talking about a roughly $20 million, of soft funds going into the project, and that is how it happens. That is the subsidy that allows it to make money.
And when one of these units is vacated because somebody moves, somebody dies, whatever, let's say you go in there and you do some renovations on it, can you raise the rent then, or is the rent freezed for that unit, or is it freezed for the tenant? Like how does that work?
So the restrictions run with the unit. So if we have a Section 8 unit, it's the next tenant that moves in will also 30% of their income will go to pay us directly, and then the rest will be subsidized by the federal government. I guess what was the second half of your question?
You got it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and just one last question, which is, so right now 98 of the 256 units
Yeah.
are Section 8. When you redo this HUD contract, is that number subject to change?
The only way it would be subject to change is if it goes up. I mean, we're not decreasing it. So we'd like to be able to put more Section 8 on it. That would be the ideal mechanism. And there's a lot of hoops to jump through to do
Okay.
Quick question, on those, you said 2 plus 30 years on that
Yep.
pilot. Those 2 years that you planned for renovations,
Correct.
does that mean those 2 years there's no tax? Or
No.
does it start after those 2 years?
We have a pilot schedule with like literally to the dollar. So we know.
Which you have.
Yeah.
Right, so it starts from year 1, because a lot of times with these groups, they're doing a new project and they need 2 years to finish a project. Taxes aren't going to start till they're ready to rent. So
I asked for that. The answer was no, but yes, yeah.
Well, because you already have people living
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So, yeah.
No. It was a reasonable request by you guys to say you should pay taxes during. But that was, it was a good question. Yes, it's not occurring. We're paying taxes.
All right. Any more? I would send out. I can either, if you leave a phone number or an email, we can definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, however you guys want to.
Could you just touch on 2 quick things that I know that came up at the last work session that we were at? One is the $37 million number.
Yep.
Is that real? Is that an
30 million. The 30 million you said?
It's actually roughly 38 million is where we are.
If you could break that down and
So
explain
yeah,
that.
round numbers, and I can't, we don't have everything perfected with the state, but it's we have an acquisition cost, we have about $18 million of hard costs, and then there's soft costs. So we have to pay engineers, we have to pay architects. There's a bunch of fees. We also have a bunch of reserves. So we're required by the state to have a certain amount of reserves, in case there's expenses at the property are higher. We have funds to pay it. So there's as well as capital reserves.
So the 38 includes the price of the.
Includes the price of the land. The price of the buildings. Of the existing project, as well as hard and soft costs and reserves.
Then I think I think you might have touched on it, but the question came up with regards to ensuring that the rents, that they are the duration of the 30 years, or you know, what the state contract was, and they don't turn into a market rate or high end and
Yeah,
it's just to kinda
we don't have
confirm
an ability to do that, right? So we have restrictions from the state on it for the LIHTC restrictions for 30 years. We have the Section 8 contract for at least 20 years. Yeah, the state may put additional restrictions with their $20 million, you know, their rough numbers of debt that will probably run with it as well.
So I guess my last question would be, anyone can live there. There's no discrimination as to income, high or low.
Well, I would say a unit that is restricted with a low-income tax credit would say, this unit, you know, if you make more than X number of dollars, you don't qualify to live.
Well, it'd be a number of units, not a particular unit.
A particular unit, like the actual restrictions run with units. So
you might have a
we will have, because it's mixed income, we will have some units that will be, have an ability for people with higher incomes.
All right,
to
so
live there.
when you're saying that, let's say how many buildings are there?
There's 22 buildings.
22 buildings, so you're saying that there will be a particular building that will be just Section 8 housing?
No.
That's what I say
It's
about
scattered.
units.
It's scattered through the site, right? So one building may have, I mean, right now, like on average, there's four. You know, about 4 units per building has Section 8.
But they will be particular units.
Yeah,
Or
particular
not-
units, like the actual Section 8
The actual
contract
units
runs with
will
the
be
unit.
for Section 8 housing only.
Correct.
I don't know why, but I'm just saying that.
Yeah, it's a federal. That's the way it is. It runs with you. Technically you have an ability to change it, but it's like a whole process.
We will circulate Joe's email, and we will circulate Lenny Skrill's email from the state as well, so that you have the ability to, I think Joe answered most of those questions, but you should be able to contact Lenny directly if you want to as well. We want to make sure that you have that.
Can I have the
opportunity.
cell phone number?
He apologized. He wanted to be here in person, but like I said, he was available by phone. But
Understood.
So you guys have asked the most detailed questions I've ever had from any city council. So,
Mr. Eddy, thank you for coming down. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
There you go. Let's have a little Pat to get help. Pat's here.
You guys asked me so many questions.
We're not going to ask you a lot of questions.
Are we talking what, like $38 million?
I kept my mouth
here, or
shut
what?
just to ask for questions.
It'll be the best Halloween fest ever.
Tell us about 189, please.
Focus,
So,
focus.
just RL to accept a donation to show Hocus Pocus and accept candy from various local businesses and social service groups at a Halloween event at Rec Park.
awesome.
That's great.
All free of cost.
Any questions?
Pat, what night is it?
It's going to be October 19th. There's flyers.
Right here. There's the flyer here. Grab the flyer.
Jeez.
Come on, dude. You're behind the line. No questions, Pat? All right. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Sorry to keep you that long.
Do I have to bring my own chair?
So bring your own chair.
And your own pumpkin.
And your own pumpkin.
I'll bring you in case.
And BYOB. Chuck Shager.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think you want to be into.
All right, Ray, we'll go to you now.
You can't go to Ray yet.
You guys go here first. Oh, you're here now? Okay.
It's all one.
It's all one deal, okay.
Danny needs to sign the exception.
Oh, that's about 190.
If you go back to 2000 and beginning of 2018, we moved money into a reserve for flood mitigation,
Yes.
and we're at the first step of doing some of that work, the engineering work on it with Tetra Tech, and we want to move, I believe it's $185,000 out of the capital reserve and create a new line for Binghamton levy study and improvements. So that's what that is, basically taking that $185,000 out of the reserve and put it into an account to use.
Questions or
And this is
comments?
for the walls, correct?
I'll let Ray talk.
Right? Like the wall on Court Street that's falling apart, is that a study for that part, or is that Army Corps?
This is a study of all the levees and flood walls in the city to eventually get as many of them certified with FEMA as we can. Once a levee or wall is certified, then the area that it protects does not require flood.
How long is that certification for?
10 years.
10 years.
Once it's certified.
Once it's certified, it's 10 years. You have to go through the process. A smaller research process every 10 years.
Harry, my guess is some of the walls, some section of the wall pass, some won't, obviously, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
They will make
there's no way-
recommendations on the ones that don't.
Okay, there's no way to tell before we get in here how it looks.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Why wouldn't the wall be certified? What would be the?
Not high enough.
Not high enough?
Obviously, they changed the rules over the years.
They changed it based off the flood, the last flood.
The two key ones are there's not enough freeboard, which means the height of the wall or the structural integrity of the levee or the flood wall. Those are the two main
Those are two
considerations.
I would imagine it's hard to change the height of the wall because, I mean,
Correct.
how do you do that?
You can't.
Correct.
You gotta go
Tear it
all
down
the
and
way
start
down.
over.
Yeah.
Wilkes-Barre did that once and it flooded them, everybody behind them.
Oh, wow.
So those properties are they gonna be destined for higher flood insurance at that point? Is that what's gonna happen?
I don't think FEMA's made that determination.
Yeah, so FEMA has delayed their flood mapping system, quite a bit, partially because of pushback from local leaders. The point, as the mayor said in his budget address, is if we can certify these flood walls, the residents that are behind them, that are protected by them, will not need to get the expensive flood insurance when those come in. In the areas where we are not able to certify the flood levees and flood walls, Tetra Tech will work with us to identify any federal funding that can be made for improvements, whether it's to the levees themselves, structurally. It's possible that there may be just some minor improvements that need to be made to these.
Is dredging the rivers a possibility for that?
No. Dredging the river does not do anything for flood mitigation because it increases the flow of the river, meaning that flooding would happen then downstream. You have deeper.
Can't pass your problem
rivers.
on to the next guy.
It'll never be done. It'll never be approved by FEMA.
It's like raising the walls, you can't do it because when you do that, you're flooding everybody behind you.
So Tetra Tech did the same project for the town of Nichols some years ago. We're the first in Broome County, but we have, we're the first in Broome County. They were in Tioga County. So this is phase one, and then phase two will be actually the more in-depth study. But they've kind of developed a dream team of local engineering firms, as well as their national experience on this.
Offhand, do you know how many levees and walls there are that they're going to be doing?
6.2 miles.
Right, that's the length, but it's broken into sections, and if you're asking me how many sections, I can't really tell you because there's a lot of them. It's not, this little piece is considered a section, and then for some reason the next one is only this long, then there's one this long, so they're multiple sections.
And how long is the duration of the project?
He told us that they'd be done with phase one by the end of the year.
Right.
And then that would give them the information to move on to a phase two.
And they would,
Within the next 2 months, it would be completed, 6 point some miles?
Well, this is the data analysis. They will be doing some on-site inspections, but there's a lot of data that's already been compiled by the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA as it relates to the study of these walls, notably how much freeboard. FEMA does a hydroanalysis of the river and says, in a 100-year flood event, here's what we believe the river level to be at. That's kind of phase one, and then phase two is the structural analysis. We recently did a contract with Martin LaJudas to do video inspections of the floodwall conduits. That's data that can be put into this first part of the study. The second part, where there's borings and drone inspection of the walls, that would be in phase two.
Councilman Livingston.
So, Ray, I imagine that this is part of a a larger plan? It's not just that we're doing this study, but this would open us up to maybe doing something else down the line, or what's the big picture here?
The big picture is to get as many sections of the flood walls and levees certified as we can to reduce FEMA requirements for insurance.
Okay.
That's
Other questions or comments? All right, let's move on.
when you guys end up passing, the CF has to move the money first, then you can do the other ones.
We did both.
Yeah. Yep. Next one too.
Hi, Franco.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
What are you doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
Is it always this? It just seems like this room vibrates.
Yeah, is there something you can do about that?
I gotta talk to Kevin.
Yeah, please do.
This has been going on for a long time, Franco.
This is like
We got engineering here, and he can't fix it. He ran out the door. Hey, Franco. Where are you going? We've been living with this for years, I think.
This is-
you know,
yeah,
so it's been
years.
going on for a while.
Coach should really take a look at it.
Tell us about 192.
192. We had a purchase order that got approved with the Board of Contract Supply last November, December to do the canopy out in front on the west side of the building on State Street. Codes, buildings and codes, while we were erecting it, said we don't have a permit for this and we need an engineering stamp. So right there, it was under temporary, and I don't know if you've noticed all the wood that was there all those weeks, but all that was going on. We should have known, the contractor should have also have known at that time. We got our structural engineer to come up with design based on what they had already up. And when they did that, there was an additional cost to the project. If you go out there and you look at it, the engineers from Griffiths Engineering expect out stainless steel, and which drove the cost up an additional $15,000.
So we were doing work on City Hall and the project got stopped because we didn't have a permit for it.
Exactly.
That's pretty bad.
Imagine that, Conrad.
Please don't print that.
No, that's too. You would think that we all know that.
Jeff,
right?
that's too much fun. You would print everything.
That's like a sick joke.
It is. It also got approved by COD, and one of COD's requirements was that we get a contractor and materials be here local. If you notice that, PJF got Binghamton plate glass to put the original one, and that was back in December. We put that together. PJF has done, I would probably say, 12 purchase orders with us.
Who's PJ?
They're out of Owego. They're in the county on their county contract. They're one of the few contractors that will actually give you an estimate or a proposal, and if they come under, they come below it. So, and the honorable company, and they were already in it, and it says I've got to get it done. I've got to get it done, and however it shakes out, it shakes out.
Questions for Franco? Thank you, Franco.
You're welcome. You folks have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Sorry for keeping so long.
I blame that on
Just picking Conrad.
Mr. Crum, how are you today?
Good evening. Fine. How are you? You guys are running like longer than you thought you were.
Yeah.
So Ron couldn't make it?
My understanding that Ron's item has been postponed 2 weeks because he was already previously scheduled for another municipal meeting with another municipality.
Okay.
But Jessica would be the one that would have to comment on that because I don't have anything to do with your schedule. Did we hear anything from him?
So I received an email from his administrative assistant approximately 3 weeks ago saying that he wouldn't be at the work session 3 weeks ago, but he would attend this work session.
So this is news to you too?
Jess, could you reach out to him and try to schedule him again?
Yes, I can.
If not, come here and then at least maybe have a phone call on this or something.
I can do that.
Thank you.
I appreciate your work, sorry you have to.
We're,
Getting the door slammed in your face.
Yeah, we're off agenda.
The item I'm here for this evening is RL 19-193. This is a budget modification legislation was submitted on September 5th. And I know you're busy during the budget season and probably just didn't get on the agenda for a prior meeting, but because of the time, we're asking this be expedited to be voted on at this Wednesday's meeting on October 9th. We're seeking through this RL budget transfer approval for $30,000 from contingency to the permits, fees, and fines line. $15,500 of this is needed to pay the annual Speedies permit fee for the plant that's due by October 16th. And the remainder goes toward the monthly stipulated penalties that are ongoing due to the delays in the owner construction projects. And that's what this is about. And the reason that the Speedies permit fee is not in the budget is because that money had been used for earlier fines, stipulated penalties.
questions or comments? Thank you, Ed.
Okay, thank you.
I've got one more thing. During the last business meeting, there was a vote to accept the grant for the fire department. Councilman Livingston voted abstained from that vote, which apparently is a violation of council rules. Apparently, and I'll let Ken talk more about it, you have to, it's a yes or no vote. It's not an abstention. So Ken, can you talk about that for a second, please? When you can abstain, when you cannot abstain? Or when can you recuse yourself?
Yeah, council is required to, anytime councilman is present, you're required to vote. The exception is if you recuse yourself, and there are two bases for recusal. One is you have a conflict of interest that New York State law requires you to recuse yourself. I'm voting on a contract. My spouse is the president of the company that I'm voting on. You have a direct financial interest in that vote. Clearly, that not only do you have to recuse yourself, you're prohibited from voting under those circumstances. The other circumstances, generally, you may have a conflict where you don't think you can be objective for a specific reason. Right? It's not my recusing yourself. Say I like to recuse myself from this vote. My cousin is the president of that organization. It's not a direct financial relationship to me, but I can't be objective. Other than that, your council rules. Actually, if you give me a second.
I've never, all the years I've been, I've never had anyone abstain from the vote. You could hold it over.
26-5E. 26-5E4. Every member of council who shall be present when a question is stated from the president or acting president shall vote thereon unless excused by a majority vote of the council. So actually where this has come up in the past is, I'm trying to remember which council person, but Councilperson Smith, so I can't vote on this because my husband's on that board and therefore we can't give money to that. And then the council president said, well, I need a motion from council to excuse them from the vote. And I would say, they can't vote.
Right.
You can excuse them if you want to or not, but they can't vote.
I've recused myself from park outdoor.
So example, park outdoor, because you might have a financial, you provided them with information that might have a direct.
Recusal as opposed to an abstention, that's two different things.
There's no, you have to come in then and say, I don't feel, and actually, you're a new council person, right? There was something that was on and you say, you know what? This has a 3-month history. In the week that I've been on council, I haven't been able to absorb any of this. I don't feel like I'm qualified to vote. I'd like to be excused from this vote. That would be a circumstance where I could see council then voting, right? But that to me would be it's not a conflict, it's not a recusal question, but it's I'm really not able to vote on this for some specific reason.
So you can hold it over for another for the next meeting?
You can hold it over if you thought within 2 weeks you'd never get that information, but that's where council would have a vote. That's the circumstance I can think of off the top of my head where, that's kind of what we go to council. Like I said, if Councilman Mazzo recuses himself because he has a financial relationship with an applicant, you can't say no, you have to vote. New York state law prohibits him from voting. So I'm sorry, you were gonna...
Yeah, just out of curiosity, what happens if the council person walks out of the room before a vote? Is that an abstention? Is that a nay vote?
Then they're not present.
Not present.
It's the same as if they didn't attend the meeting.
Just curious.
Yeah.
So Councilman Livingston, I'd encourage you to follow the council rules. And when the vote comes up, it's either yes or no.
Okay, well, I mean, not for nothing, but, and I'm not putting you on blast, but you're the city council president, and we had a lawyer in the room, and none of this came up. This was not.
Well, she did. She did say it,
that.
and then you insisted on not voting, and so she just let the meeting go on. But
She said she'd have to check into it.
Sure. Well, I guess I'm just saying, it's not all on me.
No, it's
Okay.
fine.
I just wanted to make
move
sure that-
forward. I just wanted
Yeah,
to make sure
that-
we all
that's
follow
not a
council rules.
problem.
That's all.
You
Okay.
Wait a minute, you weren't changing your mind. You abstained twice. The attorney was saying that you can't do that. You continued to abstain. You couldn't get. It wasn't going to go to 2 weeks from that meeting. So you did. You were not going to vote. So it was on you.
Does that mess up the grant?
I'm sorry?
Will that mess up the grant?
No, it's still
No.
passed.
No. What the
You had to vote it out.
There was no substantive effect on the motion.
Yeah.
I just have one, if we're done with this, I just have one thing. So Marilyn McCall has been coming to the business meetings a couple of times to talk about the noise and the lint coming from base Troy. And I actually sent everybody the email that council sent to me, that Corp Council sent to me from BPD, that they had basically followed up on her noise complaint, and they went to confirm on 9/18/2019 at approximately 2:30 in the morning, and there was a crew working, and an employee.
Wow.
What's that?
Oh, just well.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that's well past the time that they're allowed to be working. Apparently there was a crew. I don't know what a crew means, but I guess more than one person. An employee leaving his shift told the officer that the loud noises were caused by running washers and dryers inside the building. And I just wanted to bring this up because I know that some of you had contacted the owners, and it sounded like they had rectified the situation, but it seems that BPD has confirmed that it's still ongoing. And I guess the question is, could you contact that, or whomever had talked to the owners, if you could talk to them again? Or
I thought it was so.
I think we should probably get code involved with it if they're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, after.
I mean, because Chris is
closing,
trying,
they-
I mean,
The zoning would be zoning.
Chris has tried to, that's gonna be a good neighbor, and if there's still an issue, I think we should have code
Yeah,
involved.
I mean,
with it.
from what I understood, he was going all out to be
Yeah.
that good neighbor, and
Well, apparently he has.
Right,
well,
so I mean,
I don't know.
you want the business to be a good neighbor, obviously,
Right.
so, I mean.
You also
so
want
we
the
should have-
business to work.
so you want to,
Exactly. No,
so
I
it might
get
have
it.
been.
No, I agree
too, I know.
Yeah.
So it might have been that one night. Who knows? I mean, you
No.
can't form an opinion on either one
That's why we
based
should,
on.
that's why we should get
based
code
on-
involved.
so that's gotta be-
Yeah.
So what should we do, I guess, is the question. I'm pretty new to this. I don't know how to, I don't want to screw up their business, but I also this confirms what
But that was
Maryland
that was in September, correct?
Yeah, that was.
Has there been any other days that?
Well,
Can you ask her if there's been any other days with noise, and then we could take it from there and go maybe into with code. and get code involved.
Well, she
You know,
told
I
us
said-
on the record that it happens, you know, repeatedly throughout the week. Her and her.
Well, that's
her
what I'm
neighbor
wondering, has
does
it
it.
happened since the September
I mean, do we
one,
need
too?
a?
Did she come
Because
to
this
the?
is late.
did
Yeah,
she
she
come
came
to
to
the-
two
But
business
no, she
meetings.
came to a meeting after that day.
She's been to two of them. She's been to
No, it
two
was
meetings.
before
So it
that.
was before that
It was
day?
before, it was, yeah, it was before that date. Because that's why she responded to him in September. And that was, I think it was early September when she came, so.
Well, that was the
So
first
what-
time she came.
Right.
So
the second
there,
time.
she's
First time
actually
she came
hearing
was
the
in August.
machines running
Oh, was it
inside the
not?
plant.
Yeah.
Any of the,
She
any
did
of the
come
other
and talk
neighbors?
to
Any
her.
of the other
Well,
neighbors?
she came in with another neighbor
Right.
at the
It was-
first meeting, and
And
they
they lived right next door to her, I believe.
The other neighbor actually lives over on, I think she lives on Clark Street, so it's actually a little bit further away.
Is it still
3 blocks
happening? That's
away.
what I wanted.
What's that?
That's 2 blocks away.
Because it's almost.
Yeah, it's
So that noise is really traveling.
It's gotta be loud.
Yeah, so I mean,
Things
nobody,
echo on the
nobody,
west side.
nobody wants to live in a neighborhood like that.
Clark is just,
Everything
it's
echoes.
It's a
It's
block
a quality
away.
of life
block
issue.
away. It's not so far away,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and she lives like pretty far
And then
down
Clark
on there,
Street
so
goes to
she's
the
like,
bank, yeah.
I mean, there's probably like a parking lot.
President Terry will.
So I think, so we have, I guess, a police report, sounds like, maybe.
Yeah,
Okay, so.
definitely from.
All right,
yeah.
so in instances where there's some type of use violation that's beyond the hours of 9 to 5, we refer the police report to the zoning enforcement officer. It sounds to be a site plan violation if they have operating hours of the business, and then they can investigate it and make the business owner aware, and then if there are further police reports to the same extent, then those can be forwarded to the zoning enforcement officer. They don't actually have to be, there on site.
Okay.
Police report, is good enough, but it sounds like something they can investigate and follow up on.
That's the way to do it, I guess.
I believe it's your district.
Oh, yeah,
It's definitely my district.
That way you have documentation.
Oh yeah, I'm in regular communication with them. I mean, I'm just,
No,
bringing it back up because
I really like
it
that.
kept coming back up here.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.